Good morning. I'm Nicolás Cardelino. I'm a member of the development team at GeneXus. I work with the web generators. And my presentation today is to share with you some of the characteristics of the new GeneXus Tilo version. In particular, I'm going to talk about the new characteristics focusing on improving UX for the end users of the applications generated with GeneXus. First of all, I would like to talk about UX without going into the academic aspects with a clear example. Let's do it in parallel with a restaurant. In a restaurant, the UX is given by several variables. First of all, the quality of food, the attention received by the customer, the decoration, the setting, lights, music. This all comes together so that we spend a good time, so that we get a good user experience. The experience of a user is subjective. I may recommend a restaurant that I like, but maybe a friend considers this is not so good. But in general, there are basic things that in most cases result appealing to the user. And we have to make a difference between the UX from the UI. In a restaurant, we may have a very beautiful table, good setting, everything in order, comfortable chairs. The user interface is very good, but if the music is too loud or the food is cold, that's not going to be pleasant. The user experience as a whole will not be considered as good. If we get good, quick service, but then the chair is not comfortable, it's wobbly when I cut my beef, it's not going to be a good experience. So the user experience is more holistic. It involves more variables than the user interface. Let's go back to GeneXus. In the first versions of GeneXus 7.0 up until now, there have been many changes. The applications have evolved. From the first era, when we had complete refresher on the screen, it was a white screen and the variables would go to the server and then came back and there was a reconfiguration of the screen. We moved on to a new type of dialogue. There were new technologies that have been adapted in the course of our evolution, and Ajax was one of the things that helped us. We have been including Ajax in the generator to such an extent that so far we run this on Ajax. The thing is that today, Tilo version gives us an opportunity to solve a major challenge, and that is to create the type of applications that our users are expecting. What kind of applications do they expect? What they use in the spare time that gives them the best user experience. It's reasonable for someone who works all day with one system, expects it to be enjoyable and easy to use. And given the revolution of the smart devices, if you've had an opportunity to use an iPhone or an Android, you would have noticed that in general these are applications that have a very good user experience. So these challenges pose a very ambitious objective to us. By using Tilo, we want you to use applications and create applications, create them with GeneXus as a natural consequence of developing GeneXus and not a new objective for you as users. So my presentation is about this. I will tell you what these new features are. And they are divided into three main parts. First of all, I will refer to some changes we will be making in the way we program with GeneXus, especially how events are triggered, so that we can reach that objective. Secondly, I will deal with something that so far we have not mentioned, and this is the way in which you navigate from one screen to another, or one page to another, what dialogue from one web panel to another web panel. And thirdly, we will talk about some changes that we will introduce in the behavior of the web components. So let us talk about changes in the programming models. Why are we talking about this? Because we think we need to solve a problem. As I said before, we have inherited a programming modality that we inherited from the first stages of web programming. We had to send everything to the server, and this was reconfigured. So today, when we run a user's event, we refresh the whole screen. All the variables go to the server, and they come back. The values are changed. We do everything through Ajax. But there are things that we can improve. We would like these user events, when being run, send only a few variables to the server, and only the values of the variables that were modified come back to the screen with the properties of those variables that were changed. So, let's refresh the order in which events are triggered. This is how it works, but in a summary. When we access for the first time to a web panel, the GET, G-E-T, we do the start events, refresh, and load. When we do a user event, an enter button or a search button, we do start, we do the reading of the variables on the screen, then we do the code of the user event, and then refresh and load, as in GET. In the new model we suggest, for the Tilo version, GET is unmodified. We do start, refresh, and load, but the post presents some changes. The start event is no longer run, and we have directly the user event. Refresh and load will not be run implicitly, and if we want them to run, we have to declare explicitly that we want them to run. So the start will be run only once in the life of that screen. This is very similar to Win or CD. And the user event is always run, and explicitly we should be saying if we want refresh and load to update a grid on the screen. What are the benefits of these changes? These are important changes, but the benefits are also important. First of all, we will have less traffic, both upstream as well as downstream. If there is a user event, we will only transfer the values of the variables used in the user event. Before, in the current model, we transfer those that will be used to the refresh and load. So this is a reduction of traffic. And in terms of the response of the server to the customer, from server to client, we'll only have the values of variables that were modified and the properties of the controls that were modified. At the same time, we will have less processing on both ends, both server and user. In the server, because we will only use the user event. But the start event is not going to run. And at the end of the user, the package that he will receive will have a smaller response, so the client will spend less time in processing it, and this will enhance the performance. We believe that this new model that we propose for Tilo has advantages in terms of programming and developer experience, On the side of, it's more similar, if you like, very similar to what you are used to program if you come from Wind and the smart devices platform. And we believe that is more intuitive and easier to learn if you have to learn it from scratch. And we give more control to the programmer in terms of what happens on the screen. He will be able to decide what to refresh and when. Maybe many of you are wondering what's going to happen with your KBs working in Evolution 1, Evolution 2. When you migrate to Tilo, the behavior will be the same. The model or the order of event triggering will behave in the same way. You will have a web user experience. You will be able to configure the environment. So when you migrate, this will be easy. The KBs created will be on, so you will be able to use all these benefits offered by the new configuration. But you will be able to configure the property according to object. So you will be able to use these new benefits gradually or face new developments in new event models. So if you wish, what we are dealing with these new improvements will help us improve dialogue in one same page. Another thing that we will be doing is improving the way we go from one page to another. We will improve the dialogue. Now, why is it that we believe there is a chance for improvement? Because we want to solve two problems. On the one hand, we have UX, user experience, and in some systems we use in the web, in a website, when we go from one web panel to the next, the page may go blank while we are loading the destination page. And this is disruptive in the flow of users' work. It degrades the experience of the user, in other words. And on the other hand, in the performance, if we have two pages, many times these pages share common elements like the header or the menu. So we are not only losing or transferring elements that are unnecessary, but we are also wasting time when we redraw them. So the Tilo version has allowed us to identify a scenario that is more profitable, more beneficial. There is a web panel and the transactions share the master page. In the Tilo version, we first identify the case, and when we navigate from word panel A to word panel B, Ajax will allow us to update only those parts that have changed. So we will change the content placeholder and those items or controls in the master page that have suffered modifications. This will allow us to control this transition from one page to the other more efficiently. In this way we will control it, and we will be able to do more interesting things, like, for example, let me show you the example. The abstract one I have here. This is an animation. When I bring in the new content, I will animate this to have a more elaborate user experience about what's going on. Did you attend Gaston's presentation? He gave a good example of the kid, of the baby, how he realized where things were coming from, and he removed them and pushed them back with his fingers. Not only will we benefit from this new mechanism when the web panels or screens share the master page, but if they don't, we will benefit as well, because we will reduce traffic. There will be we will be able to take advantage of these visual effects that I mentioned. Some characteristics of these new features. It is based on HTML5, so they will allow us to use animations and transitions. We will detect the capacity of the navigator where the application runs, and if the navigator supports these new characteristics, we will use the new mechanism. If it's an Internet Explorer 6 and does not support it, we will try to do navigation in the traditional way. Regarding animations and transitions, the visual effects, when we move from one screen to another, you will be able to configure them. We will give you a predetermined animation, but you will be able to personalize it, customize it, or turn it off if you don't want it. Regarding the Internet searchers or browsers, if this is an intensive AJAX use, we will nevertheless be indexed, and your application will be able to be indexed, so you don't have to worry. Let's look at the benefits we derive from this change. First of all, as I said, less traffic, because we are not transferring what is unnecessary, what is a commonality between the original web panel and the destination web panel. There will be less processing in the server, because this is going to be simplified. And finally, there will be a better user experience thanks to the effects and the transitions that I mentioned when we have to charge the content of the placeholder, web placeholder. Let us now talk about the web components improvements. The web components, we want to make them more independent on the screen. We want the web component to be an independent object, an independent part of the screen. So when you do a user's we do that in the field of the WCA, B or C. So we can also offer feedback with an activity indicator in the field occupied by the web component, and to take advantage of animations and transitions to substitute old contents for new contents. With this independent web components, or WCs, on the screen, we will find new problems. What if a web component modifies one data and shows that it is not updated? That's why we will introduce a new mechanism that will allow us to group the web components on the screen, so that when we have web components that depend on the same information or that should be updated together at the same time, I put them all together, and the programmer, when he knows that information changes, will give orders to upgrade the whole group of web components. Now, the benefits here are repeated, but they add up as well. So I will go over them again. There will be less traffic, both upstream and downstream, because we will only have one smaller group participating. Once again, there will be less processing in the server and at the level of the customer. We believe that there's a lot of value here, because the programmer will have more control over the interface, and he will be able to configure the indicators or animations that are shown, and this goes hand in hand with the user experience. We will provide him with a better feedback, and he will know what the word component is doing. We will be able to substitute it, and this will give a better user experience and will communicate better what is happening at the interface. I prepared a demo with an application that we were doing with the web team. This application was created for two reasons. We needed something to test and prototype the new features. And secondly, we needed an application to solve a problem we had. The problem is that we have some obligations in the Apple in the App Store, and we wanted to know how how well we were doing with those applications, how many downloads there were, and with the console that we had, it was quite difficult. So we connected to an API provided by Apple, and we presented in a dashboard format, and this is the results that I'm sharing with you. Let me tell you how the application is configured. We have this dashboard, we have a web panel, and then we receive parameters and keys, and it shows detailed information of the application. The dashboard has the web panel structure. On top, the header with the logo and the menu. That's on the master page of the application. Then, the object itself, we have filter by date. That filter by date is in the object itself. And then we have 4 web components. In this web component, we have a list of applications that have been selected. We are getting information on them. And then, on the basis of this selection, we have a summary of the downloads and some graphs that show downloads per country and over time. It should be said that this application uses the query object as control. We use it on GeneXus exclusively, and I will show you what sort of dialogue we obtain from this application. I will change the selection on the list of applications. This will refresh the grids and the specifications on top. You'll see that as I do selections, there is an effect, a fade-out effect, and we update the components that appear on the screen. How was this done? There is a user event programmed by GeneXus. It is associated to the checkbox, and when this was run, we only run the user event, and then using the new mechanism, it grouped together web components. They are in color here. And this was refreshed all together. The whole group of web components updated and refreshed while the others didn't. And the grid was not reconfigured. Today, when we run an event on the grid, this is reconfigured. But this is not the case here. Now I will change the filter, which is the main object. We had selected 7 days back. We went 7 days back, and this was all updated. The chart, the graph, and the list that shows the number of downloads. This is very similar to the previous one. We used just the user event, and as the programmer knew that everything on the screen depended on the filter because it would affect the grid, the indicators, so he put together the refresh command, the refresh and load, and the web components. And in this way, this is a very similar case to the way we program without the start event. As I said, here on the right, we have a list of applications. This list of applications is the start, and the button here says more information. When you press the button along this line, you will have a web component, and you will see the effect of the feedback. And as we update the information, transitions and animations are used in different ways.
Ven ahí el feedback.
You have the feedback. This area is occupied by the web component that uses a summary for the application. I'm going to do this for the other rows. You see that on top this is repeated, we see an indicator. You notice the effect of fade in and fade out of the web component when it loads. Now it moves to another row, and this is the effect when we load the new element. And finally, the demo will show you something that I mentioned in the beginning. I mentioned the header and the menu in the master page. Now I will click on this link and it will bring another web panel that is new, the one that shows detailed information about the application. When I click here, the destination page will be loaded with the support of Ajax, and then it will navigate and bring animated information from the right side. So we click. See, from the right we use an animation effect and we bring it, and it's navigated, it goes on navigating, it brings in the same object, changing the parameters from the right side. This is how new applications will navigate with Tilo, using this effect or any other effect you design. Well, in short, today I presented the new features of Tilo version around two main pillars. We provide a better user experience and with an application that is more agile, with a more fluid dialogue. If you're interested in this presentation, there are new features in the Tilo version, and Gonzalo Balotti will now talk about that, so I invite you to stay on. This is all on my part. This is my Twitter and my email address. I will be around in the room, outside the room, so come to me if you have any other questions.